Greetings, Abe Max here at the Beauty Seed. So glad you could join me. I love having you here listening and attending, and I appreciate all of your attention. So, welcome. I wanted to first off apologize because Zoom and all of that world was not liking my audio interface connectivity, and the audio quality is not great. So, take it with a grain of salt. The conversation was excellent. I was talking with Mark Walmsley of the Arts and Culture Network, which is an online community of artists and industry people and those interested in the arts, and a way to connect and network and all of that. I really enjoy that space, and I enjoy Mark and his perspectives on things, and we got into a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And please pardon the audio. It drives me nuts. I hope it's listenable. If it's not, please reach out in the comments and let me know. Otherwise, sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and enjoy this chat with Mark Walmsley. Lots of love, grace be upon you, and thanks for coming. Enjoy. Welcome to the Beauty Seed. And boom.
Boom.
Mark Walmsley, I am so pleased that you could join us here on the Beauty Seed. It's my pleasure to get to know you a little bit more through this process of finding you on LinkedIn and your amazing network that you've created for artists all around the world to connect. It was new to me to get into these 5-minute breakout rooms, really hone my craft, steel, sharpen steel, right? So getting into these 5-minute breakout rooms was a really new experience for me. And I found that I was like a fish to water. I don't know where you came up with this 5-minute mark as being the time frame. For those of you who are new to Mark's work, he is the director, is that correct, of the ACN, the Arts and Culture Network, which is an online meetup platform and facilitates artists and people in the arts industry coming together to get to know each other, collaborate, generate work, and share our gifts and talents together for artists and those who love art, which I feel like is most of us. How'd you get into that space of creating an online meetup platform? I mean, that's a pretty interesting little niche. And where did you come up with that concept? How did you get into that?
It was entirely by accident, Dave. So before I talk about me, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to join you on this interview. And also thank you for being one of our full members at the Arts and Culture Network and being a regular at our events. Yeah, the potted backstory, if you like, is I'm a percussionist by training, studied at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London, spent 15 years as a freelance percussionist, set up an event company and an artist management company as well. Got into digital in the early 90s, sent my first email message in 93, waited a week for a reply. There were so few people using CompuServe.
In a baud modem time, that was a fast reply.
I know, you could almost hear the bits coming down the phone.
Yeah.
And then I taught myself web design in 94, and I was working in the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra at the time. And I said, would you like a website? And they said, a what? I said, it's a website. It's like a brochure down the phone, and people can find the gigs and learn about the orchestra. And they said, okay. I said, the London Symphony Orchestra are planning to design a website. If we're quick, we can beat them onto the web. And if you say that to anyone in Birmingham, they take your hand off. So £350 and a steep learning curve later, we launched the site in 95. And ahead of the London Symphony Orchestra. So the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra was the first professional symphony orchestra in Europe to have its own website.
That's cool.
Which was great. They loved it for that. Yeah. It got reviewed in Net User magazine in '96, and one of our big banks here, the Midland Bank, Lloyds Bank in the UK, our website for the orchestra and their website for the bank were reviewed in the same issue of the magazine. My website got 5 stars and theirs only got 3. So I thought, okay, it was a big deal at the time. So I thought, well, if I can beat one of the biggest banks in the world, then I should probably set up a web design agency, which I did in '95. That grew to about 16 staff. And I sold that in 2008 when we were kept bouncing off a glass ceiling. Either I had to sell it, merge it, or leave it. So I decided to sell it just before the economic slowdown in 2008, which was accidentally good timing. I took a couple of years off to spend time with my young children at the time, and then got lured back into the City of London as a strategy director working in a digital marketing agency. Got into digital health, had a detour through pharmaceuticals and medtech. And then in 2010, I thought my future is back in the arts and culture world. That's where my passions lie. So I set up the group on LinkedIn shortly after LinkedIn launched LinkedIn groups. So it was one of the first, and then promptly forgot all about it. So this is why this is accidental. It grew on its own. And by the time we got to 2020 and we're approaching lockdown, it had 18,000 members. And I thought, well, nobody's met anyone. It's not a community. It's just people who thought it might be fun to be a member of that LinkedIn group. And so I thought, well, we have all got used to using Zoom now. So why don't I host some networking events for the members? And so I started doing those, one a month only. And that proved really quite popular, and people were coming along in there. We had 80 or 90 people come along to those monthly meetings. And I thought, I designed a proper website, and I started or acquired 7 more groups. So as we speak today, we now have 120,000 members across those 8 LinkedIn groups, and 150 to 200 people joining every day. So
yeah, and for those of you who are not familiar, join that because they are tons of fun. I've met some amazing people through those. So it's
really kind. Yeah, we must be doing something right because LinkedIn sent us an award.
Let's link that with something else you just said, and that was this. You said you had a little foray into digital health. So what does digital health mean to you? What is that concept?
So this will have been in the the late 2000s, really. One of my friends, and those were still early days in digital, before social media, for example. One of my good friends was in the marketing procurement team at Merck, the big pharmaceutical company, MSD, I think it is in Europe. Merck Sharp and Dohme, and they wanted to reduce their digital agency roster for marketing from 70 across EMEA down to 1. And I said to Richard at the time, listen, we've got no experience in healthcare or pharmaceuticals really in our agency. We're not going to make it down to 1 from 70.
Yeah, that's an undertaking for a savage team who really knows the landscape.
Exactly. Yeah. So he said, don't actually... The decision makers are quite keen to bring in some fresh thinking. So not having any track record in pharmaceuticals and medtech and biotech is not necessarily a disadvantage. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we managed to get onto what they finally had as a roster of 4 agencies for Merck. And they did some rather cleverly. They said, right, the last stage of the pitch is going to be the first stage of the work. So all of the nations across EMEA were required to use one of 4 agencies for their digital website design, marketing.
Yeah.
And the decision maker is a lovely Norwegian guy, said the last stage of the pitch is the first stage of the work. So you're all going to be given some therapeutic areas to work in. And we were cardiovascular and
sure.
Oncology. And he said, we're going to let the devil take the hindmost every quarter. So the agency that's getting the best feedback from its clients, the least well, will be dropped off the roster until we've got one. It became increasingly obvious that none of those 4 businesses was big enough to do everything. So they left it at 4. And it was worth over £3 million over a couple of years to the agency. And I got really hooked on the concept of how digital technology can help health and healthcare support. It's come along since then, over 10 years ago now, with injectable wearables coming on. And everything that you can use, with the monitoring. So you've got a diabetes patch on and you can monitor your sugar levels on an app. It's all fantastic.
So I'm going to interrupt you because it's interesting, and I want to get back to the art thing. And so when I think of digital health, and maybe we can bridge this using that little mnemonic, this digital health thing, I think of like people going, speaking of in the healthcare industry, people going on digital fasts, for instance. I'm going to put my phone down for a day and not look at it. Like that kind of digital health to me is also super fascinating. Do you find yourself, with all that you do online, overwhelmed with the amount of time that you're spending on Zoom, for instance, or in these spaces with talking a lot? You seem to be quite capable of the talking. Do you find yourself able to remain interested in this process and project of the ACN and all those things through time?
I do. That's a great question. I do, and it's partly because I'm driven by the legacy aim that I want to leave behind. Also, I'm with you in that I believe digital technology has yet to save us time. We're all like this. So a digital detox is often a good idea, but there is. And I'm a born connector, so I love meeting new people. So my days are a bit like as a world tour on Zoom, and it's great because I offer connections and referrals during those meetings. But what's driving me with the Arts and Culture Network, and has done for the last 4 years, since it's been my focus, is that if we get enough full members, we can become a philanthropic organization. We're entirely independent. We don't have any shareholders, advertisers, sponsors, or grant-making bodies influencing our direction. So we're member determined in that respect. So the numbers, while we have 800,000 LinkedIn users on the LinkedIn group every month, while we have 120 registered members of those LinkedIn groups, we actually only have 2,000 on the mailing list, and we only have 250 full members. But that's okay. That's okay. It's just me and Isabel on Thursday. So, but if we continue to grow at the same rate, we'll have between 2,000 and 3,000 paying members, paying $12 a month, cancel anytime, by the end of the decade. And that's the point at which, and we don't need all that money. So I'm not into growth. I'm into scale.
Well, that pattern of how you're going about it was one of the things that drew me into being interested in it. We are all inundated so much. This digital health thing, we're so inundated with advertising and, these external stories about what this can do for you and all of those things, that it's really refreshing to have a group that's organic and you get in the conversations there, and it's real people doing real things with real concerns about the effect their art has and the arts in our culture and the actual culture, and not this preconceived overlay of how this culture can be leveraged to do something else. Is really refreshing. So sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm absolutely with you. And one of the things I've learned over the last 12 years is the importance of focus. And so my role as the founder of the Arts and Culture Network, or a chief of staff, as I call myself, is to create and sustain an independent environment in which arts and culture professionals and those who support them can make new connections, start new conversations, and explore opportunity for international collaboration. Mm-hmm. Now, that requires me to say no to lots of things, because if I'm just, I've had several invitations to partner with other organizations on a paid basis and revenue share, but no, it's really route one for me. Mm-hmm. And that's quite refreshing. I'm a proponent of minimalist marketing. Mm-hmm. And that was inspired by the marketing philosopher Seth Godin, who once, I used to run his London meetups, and he said to me once, find your smallest viable audience and become the best option for it. Mm-hmm. And we don't need to boil the ocean, so that's my lane. If people want representation, I'm afraid we don't do that. Thank you for inviting me to your opening in Brisbane, but I'm afraid I can't do that. I just provide the spark, and then the conversations happen, and then the collaboration happens. And we've had some wonderful success stories, some of which I've told you in the past, I think, about people getting hired during our Zoom events. We've got two members who met through the network in Canada and the States, and they found that they were both doing a similar work. They were both supporting emerging musicians as they try to navigate the music industry. So in the last couple of weeks, they've put the company together. So
excellent.
So that's why it works. But it's the drive to the legacy. I want to leave something behind, and if I can be giving away $15,000 every month to worthy causes in the arts and culture world, I'll be happy. Which you can.
But giving money away, as I know from some other friends of mine, can be a full-time job. Vetting who's doing what, and whether or not they're actually responsible enough to use the money for what they say they're going to use it for, and all those things is a whole thing. I wanted to touch on some technique that maybe some of our listeners can take away from something you just said, and that is the smallest viable audience. This concept of finding the niche, I guess you would call it. Do you have any takeaway for people on how to discern what those audiences might be in their own trajectory and craft? Like how do you go about the process of discerning who your audience is?
So there are two stages to that, and I do a workshop on both for some of our members. The first is brand discovery, personal, individual, organizational. So I have a formula for that helps people identify what makes them special. And you need to understand what makes yourself special before you decide on your target audience. So the formula is DBR equals NRT. So that DBR equals NRT. DBR is different, better, and remarkable. If you're not different, you're invisible. If you're not better, perceived as better, they'll be promiscuous. And if you're not remarkable, people won't talk about you. If you can get DBR right, then you get NRT, which is noticed, remembered, and talked about. So whatever you do in life, whether you're a visual artist or a performer or a pharmaceutical company, if you can get that bit right, then everything you subsequently do will be amplified in its impact. The key to that is that then produces an identifying characteristic. So my advice to artists and others is to say, okay, you need to capture what makes you special in a way that people lean in and ask more questions. So you're not an accountant, you're a forensic accountant. You're not an osteopath, you're a preventative osteopath. You're not an artist, you're an oceanic abstract artist. You're not, you're not, do you get the idea? So you put this operator word in front of the word that people understand, that gets people leaning in and asking more questions. That's kind of stage one. Nail that and everything else works better. The bit you refer to is the minimalist marketing and the focused approach to reaching the right people with the right thing in the right channel. So what I encourage people to do is to imagine they've got 3 buckets in front of them, and you can only put one thing in each bucket. In the first bucket goes one very specific product or service that you offer. Your foot in the door. You can only put one foot in the door. So what's your foot in the door? It needs to be fun. It needs to be rewarding, both financially and emotionally. It needs to be easy to sell. It needs to be easy to deliver. And it needs to ideally lead to repeat or recurring revenue. So what is it that you do that ticks those boxes? Having decided what that is, you then move to bucket 2. That's when you choose your smallest viable audience for that. There is a nose flute repairman who lives in Australia. It's an Aboriginal nose flute repairman. Okay. It doesn't get much more niche than that, because in order for you to be one of his customers, you've got to be in Australia. You've got to have an Aboriginal nose flute, and it's got to be broken, right? He does a roaring trade because he's the go-to guy, right? He sells them, he makes and sells them as well, but that's not what he's famous for. That's remarkable. I'm the best Aboriginal nose flute repairman in the world. That's remarkable.
It's a charmingly funny little.
I know. So so his smallest viable audience is people in Australia who have an Aboriginal nose flute that's broken, right? For others, it's going to be something different, right? So for Rossi, who I mentioned, the abstract oceanic artist, she's no longer an artist trying to please everyone. She's an abstract oceanic artist. Her smallest viable audience is people who love abstract art, love the oceans. And that makes it easier for her. She only has to be famous for those people. They'll pay more, they'll buy more, and they'll talk about it. Okay. It's the line of least resistance for what it is you're offering. So having done bucket 1 and bucket 2, bucket 3 is one channel only through which to reach those people. Now that's terrifying and liberating in equal measure. You don't wake up in a cold sweat thinking, shit, I haven't done Twitter this week or Facebook this month. Choose one channel through which to reach those people. Get them where they live. Okay. For increasingly, it's LinkedIn, because if you're over 40, you're probably not on TikTok. If you're under 40, you're probably not on Facebook. So LinkedIn is my home territory. So having decided so it's that product and service to that small group of people through that channel. Don't touch it. Just do it. And don't do anything else until you've hit your targets. That's the lesson. Once you've hit the targets, you can add one thing to one bucket. So you might sell a different product to the same people through the same channel. You might sell that product to a slightly different audience in that channel. You might sell the product to that group of people in a different channel, but you can only change one thing at a time. And it gradually does this. And the alternative is this.
Diffusion is the alternative, right?
We have finite resources of enthusiasm, time, money, and energy, and we spread them too thinly. And if you focus it, you can make sure that you're hitting the right people with the right product or service or offering in the place where they're living, and arguably we should all be doing this anyway, but
right. Well, it's effective and efficient. And in this world where there is arguably a battle for our attention on so many levels, to really become cognizant of where that attention goes and maximize that attention onto the things that matter to you so that you can be effective in the marketplace and in the world and in your life is a really valuable tool. And that what you just illustrated there is a great takeaway for people. And thank you. And
no, it's my pleasure.
Go for it.
No, it was just to finish that off. It all starts with the first thing you say when you meet somebody, or the first sentence of the paragraph that you write in an email. And if you can capture some clarity, brevity, and wit in those first few sentences, but for example, the first 6 words of your LinkedIn profile, for example, I call myself the chief of staff at the Arts and Culture Network. That gets attention. Okay, that gets noticed. A friend of mine is an accountant. When she introduces herself to people, she says, "I count other people's money," and it gets a laugh.
I love it.
If you can start with a laugh, then you're there. Everything else then works much better if you can capture that. But yeah,
fantastic. So that reminds me of another fantastic Mark England, who's one of my mentors and friends over there and Lifted. If you haven't checked that out, he's a great guy doing some great things. But he said something really interesting that really dovetails in what you were talking about, and that is that in approaching these things, questions lead to conversations and conversations lead to conversions, meaning that the process you're talking about is really kind of developing in our attention, asking really key and concise questions of ourselves about what we want out of this exchange so that we can be focused with where we put that attention. And so, you did mention questions in there. How have you filtered through your life into the discernment process of asking better questions of what it is that you want in your life?
Great question. I read a book in my teens about a guy who took a group of young people for a trek through a forest in North America. Frustratingly, I've never been able to find what the book is. But I remembered the key message. And there are 3 questions to ask yourself when you're facing any kind of decision. And if you can't answer yes to each question, you're probably not making a good one. So I use that professionally and personally. I'm happy to share them if you wish.
No, please do.
The first question is, are we addressing the real need? So quite often we don't address the real need. That you need bread, you don't need jam. Okay. You need to pay the rent, you don't need that car. So that's an important question. And it works professionally and personally as well. The second question is, have I informed myself of all of the options? My wife is brilliant at finding the third way. I'm a bit binary in my decision making. I don't give myself many options. It's either yes, we do, or no, we don't. Where actually Jo, my wife, will say, well, have you thought of doing this instead? And I'm thinking, why didn't I think of that? So think before you make the decision, have a look at all of the options. There's probably more than you think that can address this decision. And then the last question is, have we thought all of those options through to their logical conclusion? The what next question. Yeah. And that's helped me make better decisions throughout my life. If you can't answer yes to each of those questions, you're not making the best possible decision.
Right.
From a questions point of view, there is another lovely saying, seek first to understand. And if you're in a conflict or in a conversation or a negotiation, or you're trying to be, understanding yet persuasive, perhaps. I love asking questions. That's why when we did our interview, I loved it. Seek first to understand. Ask those questions. There's a lovely saying as well in certain circumstances. If you want to be perceived as the most important person in the room, make everyone you meet feel as though they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
It works. It's calm. It's like connection karma. It comes back, you need to speak to Mark Walmsley, or you should go and have a look at what Abe's doing. It's that kind of buzz. The concept of being remarkable is actually giving somebody the ability to remark about you. So and I define remarkability as a quality or a characteristic of a person or a business that gets people talking about them outside a referral. If somebody said to me, who do you know in North America who could do a fantastic totem pole, right? I'd say, you've got to go to Abe because I've seen his and they're wonderful. Yeah. What I aim for is the ability to be able to say to people, have you seen what Abe Max is doing? That's, the elephant, the dragon, the butterfly. I like to be able to talk about things like that to other people, the wonderful work that you do. So it's allowing yourself, it's asking questions to be interested in what somebody is saying so that they return the favor. fall in love with you professionally and talk about you to their friends.
Yeah, and that comes from a genuine curiosity and a genuine interest and love of the subject matter. That niche that you've found for yourself is more than a marketing strategy. It comes from a generative place of really truly being interested in that you're talking about. And it's obvious that you are genuinely interested in the people that you help to serve, in the community you help to serve. I'm really, yeah, I want to get back into, like, why 5 minutes on your breakout rooms? That popped in my field. I'll go there. There's no set piece here as far as where we're going with this conversation.
5 minutes, because some people are daunted by public speaking. Some, especially in our sector, that's not our job. Our job is to make great art, not necessarily talk about it.
Yeah.
And talking about art is like dancing about architecture. Sometimes it
that sounds
work.
Fun to me.
Yeah. So 5 minutes, it's an easy one. And if you meet somebody and you don't hit it off, it's only 5 minutes, right?
You can sweat through it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, but it's actually only 2.5 minutes, because if you're with somebody, you want to give them some airtime, and so that's why it's 5 minutes. And I wanted to keep this an hour. These meetings. I mean, we have an after party, as you know, but I wanted to keep it to an hour, because we've, the last 4 years, we're all zoomed out, really.
Yeah.
And if somebody asks me to sit on a webinar for 3 hours on Zoom, my heart just drops, but I can do an hour, and it does go quickly, as you might remember. It does.
Oh, it surely does.
Yeah. So it's only an hour. You get to meet 6 or 7 people. And if you're one of our full members, you get the shout out at the start. And it's just nice to be able to. I mean, I had a message this morning from Kat Gray, who's a philanthropist in New York. She met somebody who's trying to move to New York and get an entry-level job in the arts and culture sector. And I think she's got her an interview.
Oh, excellent.
From a 5-minute meeting.
Yeah.
So, which is fantastic. And that's what drives me doing it, because I like to hear those success stories. But yeah, I came up with, it's fast, it's fun paced. Oh no, it's fast paced, it's fun, it's friendly, it's effective. I couldn't get any more F's in that sense.
Yeah, your alliteration prowess. It's fantastic.
There's another F. Oh, thank you so much, Abe. Fantastic.
I work as an artist as well, but I primarily I help people with words, and so words are a big part of my world. So, what do you have an absolute all-time favorite one of these 5-minute meeting link-up synchronicities that comes to mind?
I think Anjali. Did I mention that earlier? No,
maybe. I don't recall.
Anjali Varma. She's a young girl, Indian girl, studying on a student visa in Connecticut to be an arts administrator. Jenny Leggery is an arts marketer based in Boston, I think. Mm-hmm. Never met before, came to one of my events, and Anjali told me, she said, I'm coming to the end of my student visa and I've got to fly back to India on Monday. And I said, oh, that's a shame. She said, yeah, I've been trying to get a job. It's the only thing that would allow me not to go home to India for the moment is a job offer. And she met Jane in a 5-minute meeting, and she offered her a job during the meeting. So she cancelled her flights, and they're still working together in Boston a year and a half later.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah, it's changed the direction of her life.
Yeah, absolutely.
She said, if I have to fly back to India, I can't afford to come back. Yeah. So she wouldn't have been able to realize her aspirations quite so quickly as she could do.
Right. See, if I were in a coaching session with her, I would say, you can't afford to fly back to America yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a nice success story.
And is there a success story for you personally that you've had out of these breakout rooms that changed your trajectory in any profound way?
Yes. But the irony is that I host these meetings. I don't get to go into the breakout rooms, but
oh, right.
Yeah. So one of our full members is Sarah Hunt. And Sarah Hunt used to be the general manager at the National Theatre in London. She resigned that to become a creative performance coach. And she does that from the Bahamas, thank you very much, with her young son and husband. When she joined one of our LinkedIn calls, I said, wow, that's a great background video, Sarah. She said, Mark, no, it's not. That's the Caribbean. And she's a very, very smart cookie and very, very good at hitting you with a felt-covered hammer. Right? She asked me a few years ago when I was trying to balance all of these things. I was doing marketing management. I was running a branding agency and trying to grow the Arts and Culture Network. And she said, what do you want to be doing? And I said, I want to be running the Arts and Culture Network solely, so I can build that up, provide for my family and leave a legacy that helps people. That's what I want to do. And she said, she said, I want one word that tells me why you're not doing that. And it was exquisite agony, the thought process. And the word was guilt. I felt guilty that I would be closing a company that I'd set up with a friend and my brother-in-law. I felt guilty that I would be neglecting my clients who depended on me for marketing, management, support. I felt guilty for my wife because I would be contributing less as we grew the new business. It was a great bit of advice she gave me. It was effectively, give it 3 months and see what happens. And during that period, my brother-in-law and my friends said they were leaving anyway to go and start an arts centre. The marketing management client had changed tack entirely and didn't need the help, so I didn't feel guilty. So there I was, and it was slightly terrifying because two sort of sources of income had suddenly disappeared, but I hadn't let anyone down, so I am guilt-free, which is great. And whilst we're not doing this from the Caribbean, it's going in the right direction financially. It's barely covering its costs at the moment, but it will do. Just gotta hang on in there. So
yeah, I have a feeling that that your success is imminent. I had a mentor actually from the London area, from a fairly old family there, but anyway, that's a longer story for another time. Robert once said to me, very loaded couple of words: assume your success.
Nice.
And so in that, there's this kind of like, it's almost like putting on an outfit. You're assuming the identity that you want to step into in this whole new overlay of what your life could be. This creating the visualization and the, like, your little tour that you do in your interviews, that's kind of like this magical little world that you're creating for yourself of possibility, that you can put that new hat on and see what it feels like and assume that.
Yeah, there is a lovely story. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's right in line with that, about Aristotle and Onassis, the Greek shipping magnate.
Yeah.
At the time, I think at his peak, he was the wealthiest man in the world. But when he was starting out in his career, he said, I only have one suit, but it is the best suit. I never turn up to a meeting in a car. I drive there and I park a few blocks away and I get a taxi to the meeting. It's a wonderful thought process. He was looking, sounding, behaving, and acting as if he'd already made it, and there is a kind of sense of manifestation around there. I often have this conversation with my wife. I said, it's manifesting may not do exactly what you want it to do, but it will change your approach to achieving it. That's good advice. I love that. What was that? Assume
your success.
Assume your success. Yeah.
And that, the discernment process of becoming really clear with what it is that you want, what you desire. I was a guest on an archetype workshop, men for men archetype workshop, discussing how archetypes can be used to put on that overlay of these fundamental roles that we have in life. And in that process, it's like, allows us this space to, and this kind of what we're talking about with these, putting on that hat of your greatest potential. It allows us this space of really becoming clear with what it is we want and how that discernment process happens, because fundamentally this creative universe that we find ourselves in really wants us to have what we want on some fundamental level, which I'm not going to get into the theology or anything of it. Not super important. The point being that the clearer we can become with those questions that we have about our life, to really get clear with what is it that I want, the less confusion there is around it, and the clearer those manifestations become, because we're asking the correct question, not necessarily the right question. It's correct enough, right? And so if we can get correct enough, then we can get out of our way enough to move forward in life and not have this paralysis of overanalyzing and over articulating all of the disparate things in our lives that, can cloud the judgment of a clear path, of putting those one pieces at a time in those three buckets. If you have your hands so full of things to put in those buckets, you're going to have a hard time even putting one in there without dropping the whole pile, right?
and then you've got to prioritize everything in that bucket. There's I think is it entropy? There's the concept that everything gets more and more complicated. The more, if you've got more, let's say in that example, in the bucket with the channels in it, if you've decided you've got to do Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, in what order do you do those? Because you're not going to get them all done. So I love that phrase you just used, the hat of potential. That's nice. That's got Harry Potter written all over it. That has.
I've been cultivating my wizard look. So, here, let's go full wizard here.
Full wizard. I love that look. That's great.
There we go.
You look like an extra from The Life of Brian.
Pull the cord. Well, Mark, I know you're a busy guy. Is there something else that you really wanted to touch on? I certainly could. I could continue for hours and hours.
I know we could, and we have. I guess a shameless plug, really.
Sure.
I'm keen to donate as much of our membership revenue as possible to good causes that are otherwise left unfunded. And that's going to be made possible by having an increasing number of full members. It's kind of like micro payments. It's $10, $12 a month, cancel anytime. But when that's brought together and is sent to a street dance group in Kampala, it gets them accommodation and food for 3 months.
Yes.
So it's this kind of democratic collective philanthropy idea is driving me, because the other thing that I just finished with is the traditional institutions of belonging are failing us. Arguably, they're causing most of the conflict around the world. Religions, nations with borders, political parties, but we still have this yearning for belonging. That's part of our sort of species DNA.
Yeah, to touch back on marketing, it's one of the 14 basic needs.
Yes.
Anyway,
community is the marketing idea of the decade. So so if anybody do come and have a look at what we're up to. Most of what we do is free, but we're entirely member funded, and that's growing in going in the right direction. So I'm looking forward to being able to give away that money every month to
absolutely,
to good causes nominated by our members.
Oh, right. So that would be the process is the members would input what they think is the most effective and best use.
Yeah. So, for example, someone might say, could I have £500 to buy a new guitar for my unemployed neighbour's daughter? We'll post that to the members. If enough of us agree, here's the money, go and buy a guitar. Simple as that. No application form.
I like that. It's in line with the trajectory that I see in the better nature of what's happening in the world, and that is that this kind of more decentralized, boots on the ground community building where real heartfelt relationships, like what we're building here with our process of getting to know each other through this bits over the tube, as it were, is really profound in the communities that are popping up all over the place. And whatever I can do to support that process and happening with people who are really affecting the change with each other and within ourselves outward into the world, rather than the world coming at us and into our space and us having to react to it. We can step into active participation and responding to our internal feeling of how the world that we want we can affect rather than be affected.
Yeah,
that process.
I think. Yeah, if you don't mind me, the arts and culture sector is the best place to save the world. We don't rely on language to the same extent as others do. We celebrate difference. And we're all going to be the same color in 4,000 years anyway. So stop worrying about it.
Yeah, it's the least important thing that I can think of.
But there was a saying, difference breeds suspicion. Suspicion breeds fear. Fear can breed hatred, and hatred breeds violence. If you can just nip it in the bud at difference, then none of the other nasty things happen. And that means educating young children. It means nobody was born racist. Nobody was born bigoted. Nobody was born rude. Right?
No, they were born in love.
So we just need to hang on to that. And I think the arts and culture sector, and because we all celebrate difference, because otherwise it would be really, really dull, then we have the opportunity to mix those cultures. I had a call this morning just briefly with one of our members in India, and we came up with the idea that I can't remember the name of the dance form, but it's an Indian dance form, traditional Indian dance form, and they sort of play out epic stories, and they're gonna come into the United States and do Shakespeare in Indian dance.
Oh, really? So, speaking of linking up things with this kind of thing, one of my good friends, Hallie Stanford, she is the director of television and production at Henson Studios, but she was one of the founding members of Shakespeare in the Park in Los Angeles.
Wow.
Oh, no, she wasn't. My wife's correcting me. What is it? Mara, you can come and she's the president of Children's Television, and she's on the board of directors, rather. And that sounds like a great fit.
Yeah. So, what was her surname?
I'll send it to you. Her name is
please do.
Hallie.
Yeah.
She's lovely. You would love her, and she would love what you're doing. So right here on this interview, we have exactly what we're talking about linking up these forward thinking creative processes, these generative moments in our lives that if we are attentive and aware of them, we can step into that space that we're creating and become that which we want to see, and link up each other with more growth. And this what the name of this project is, the Beauty Seed, is that concept was just illustrated right here for you all. That's the whole process and premise of this. So how beautiful that we could have such a poignant illustration of that right here, right now. So Mark Walmsley from the Arts and Culture Network. It's been brilliant talking with you, and I really enjoyed it. Come back again when you have time. I know that you and I both are really getting after it and busy, so I appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and share what you have with our audience. And real quick, you're mostly on LinkedIn, correct? And that's under the Arts and Culture Network.
Yeah, if you search Arts and Culture Network on LinkedIn, you can't miss us. Abe, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you and for giving me the chance to talk about the work that we're doing. I very much appreciate it.
Brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. And until next time, I imagine we'll see each other on one of these wonderful meetup calls in the near future. I narrowly missed the last one. I was really looking forward to it. So I'll have to hop on there again real soon. And grace be upon you. Lots of love. And enjoy your, I guess it's evening for you.
It is nearly beer o'clock, I can tell you.
Oh, yeah. Enjoy that cold one, or I guess warm one, depending on the pub you're in.
Yeah.
Enjoy, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right. If I can find out where, there we go.